Okay, Carter. I can stay here all night. So why don't you and I cut the crap and you tell me what happened on March 15th?
And what's in it for Carter Finley?
What's in it for you is I don't send you back to jail.
The classic prisoner's dilemma goes like this. Two bank robbers, Elizabeth and Henry, have been arrested and are being interrogated in separate rooms. The authorities have no other witnesses and can only prove the case against them if they can convince at least one of the robbers to betray their accomplice and testify to the crime. Each bank robber is faced with a choice to cooperate with their accomplice and remain silent, or to defect from the gang and testify for the prosecution. If they both cooperate and remain silent, then the authorities will only be able to convict them on lesser charges, resulting in 1 year of jail time for each. If one testifies and the other does not, then the one who testifies will go free, and the other will face 5 years of prison. However, if both testify against each other, each will get 3 years of prison.
Yeah, yo, no matter what, dog, don't snitch.
I ain't saying nothing, dude. You know me, I die before I turn snitch.
We tell them nothing, they got nothing.
As shown in the table above, the best choice for each of them is to just stay quiet. Overall, in the long term, they'll just face 1 year of minor charges and they won't suffer any long-term consequences. However, when it comes to defecting, that's the more likely scenario, because realistically, if you're facing no jail time, that sounds a lot more appealing than anything else. And if both of them decide that, then as the table shows, they both suffer by facing 3 years. However, it should be highlighted in the term where they don't say anything or they both say something. The time they face for prison is still less than if they were to rat them made out and just have the other person serve the prison sentence.
What you say to them, man?
Nothing.
This is a case where logic and ethics tend to move away from each other, as ethically it's more appropriate to rat each other out and only serve the 3 years each. However, logically it would be better just to ignore everything and just not say anything to the police. This is a case of a moral paradox, where the choices you make won't be logical in a sense and be more personal based.
That is a stand-up G. That man would never snitch.
Pizza time! Pizza time! Pizza time! Everybody love pizza time! Wake up in the morning, it's pizza time. Go to bed and eat it, it's pizza time. Pizza, pizza, pizza time!
While the prisoner's dilemma might make you think of criminal activity, it is also well documented to occur in businesses where high-stakes decisions need to be made to influence the whole company and their trajectory. However, just as within criminal cases, the interest of self will always outweigh the team if they do not wish to cooperate.
What I tell you, Rockwell, huh? What I tell you, you snitch ass bitch.
Roll with me, roll with me.
Let the atoms roll with me.
Now that we have an understanding of this moral paradox called the prisoner's dilemma, we can try to solve this using several techniques, but it does beg the question on what actually is a solution to this. One person who suggests that they have a solution is a business journal writer, Harvey S. James Jr. He, along with Jeffrey P. Cohen, conducted a study while they were teaching economics. They found that students who just did the basic economy course were more likely to participate in this ethically gray behavior, where in cases that they split students up and they gave them courses in ethics, they noticed that students who actually participated in the ethics activities ended up with a higher chance of actually doing what's better for the group as a whole.
Mr. Gordon, it is your turn. Mr. Madison, choose the topic.
I choose business ethics.
Mr. Gordon, the American business environment has fundamentally changed following the insider trading and savings and loan scandals. Explain business ethics and how they are applied today.
The ethics of business can be summarized in. See, ethics are. The thing about ethics.
As stated in the written report, while this is a great technique for allowing students to learn more ethical decision making, it requires the idea that all students are susceptible to this, and as a long-term effect, several people will slip through the cracks who still have this behavioral trait. Another problem with this technique is the requirement for extra time. Including these extra ethical models and courses to do with business will cost a lot more money for teachers and students, both due to time it takes to set up these courses and to hopefully teach them. It would also be very difficult to mark if someone is ethically accurate, purely because ethics can be falsified in many occasions. A second solution to this dilemma is repetition. While this does change the prisoner's dilemma into the infinite prisoner's dilemma, the idea is still the same. One excellent article written in the National News by Omar al-Badi highlights this in a very well detailed manner. If both prisoners are constantly asked day after day the same questions, then each time they're asked a question, their decision is recorded. After each day, the decision that both made is revealed, and this then highlights whether the fellow prisoner can be trusted. But overall, this does bring into account more negative aspects if this same dilemma is constantly repeated over and over again. It does fall into one of two categories. Either the prisoners will purely start to support each other in the long term as well as short, or one of them will deviate from this path and actually do something against the other prisoner, which does start to get into the issue of retaliation. Most likely, once trust is lost between the two, it will never be regained. and so cause an endless cycle of retaliation between both the prisoners.
Hey, Dwight.
Now, as discussed before, the biggest drawbacks would be if the prisoners were to start to go against each other, because it will cause an endless cycle of retaliation. But this isn't the only possible negative aspect of this dilemma solution. Another issue would be the loss of consequence. If you were to say in this infinite prisoner dilemma, add 5 years every single time one person is specifically chosen to take all the blame, then eventually you would reach a point where it just ends up becoming a life sentence. And as you keep going, the time keeps adding up to the point where it really doesn't matter anymore. That would cause a similar situation where either you will then fully support the other person who doesn't have the full time yet, or you will just keep retaliating until they also have an infinite time. The final drawback, in my opinion, would then also be that it no longer becomes the pure prisoner dilemma. In this scenario, the prisoners will constantly remember what happened before, will become desensitized to the fear and the panic of self-preservation, and eventually just become pure spite decision makers. This removes the more human aspect from the equation, and it just then becomes a question of logic instead of morals.
Don't. Stop. Dwight. Dwight, stop. Dwight, stop.
Oh no!
Stop.
Oh no! Yes! Take my rat!
Hey, Pickles. Merry Christmas. Open immediately. Love Swiss cheese.
My personal solution takes inspiration from the business aspect of the prisoner's dilemma. In business, it is very common for two parties to create contracts. In these contracts, clear goals are established, and the consequences of breaking the contract are clearly stated. This can be converted into a more universal manner by having something that each prisoner considers dear to them and extremely valuable. While this can always have loopholes, and while there is potential that a prisoner might be doing what they're doing because they have nothing, it is still a better option than the other two that were established before. This is because the external factors that will be hanged over the prisoners when they make their decision will bear a lot more weight, because now the prisoner isn't just thinking about themselves, but their personal goals have now been intertwined with the goals of the group as a whole. With this combination of both logic and ethics, well, in some cases it might be a very skewed version of ethics, but nonetheless, with the combination of the two, it becomes less of a moral dilemma. Just as businesses have contracts, a third party will need to be established before the crime takes place, hopefully. that allows both prisoners to be more confident in their partner's decision making. This third party's goal will be to have something of the prisoners each that they value dearly, and so if a prisoner makes a wrong choice, that thing will be lost to them. One less ethical example of this would be to have the family of each prisoner hostage. If both prisoners return safe and sound, then the families are let go and everyone is happy. However, if comes out that one of the prisoners decided to go and rat out his friend, then that prisoner's family will have to either pay consequences or just outright be removed. While this is just a simple example, it does highlight how this third party can allow more trust between the two prisoners because they both have heavy stakes in their decision making. This will hopefully unskew the balance between ethical decision making and moral decision making. In conclusion, this moral paradox known as the prisoner's dilemma provides a perfect insight on how humans have a more selfish tendency. Regarding the question on whether ethics is logical, no, ethics is not logical. This is because while humans consider themselves very logical in their decision making, in the end their more selfish desires will overcome them. This phenomena of lacking logic can also be observed in religions in today's society. Religions will often skip a few logical steps in order to justify their actions towards others. This sudden lack of ethics is then seen as justifiable. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I hope you also have learned something about the prisoner's dilemma. As stated before, the question of is ethics logical does come into question here, as the solution to making humans more logical does tend to go more against ethics. So make sure in any future decision making that you consider both whether you're making the ethical decision and whether that is also the logical decision.
Nice story, Mr. Dickens.
Oh, thanks. If you like this, you should read the book.